So Richmond is pretty ethnically diverse where I grew up. Poor neighborhood, but not a slum. And even though the city of Richmond was kind of ethnically diverse, not much so for people who were mixed ethnic, not mixed, of course, black, white, Native American, and so that wasn't that popular, it wasn't that tolerated. And as I grew up, being a mixed ethnicity, I felt hate from both sides, both black and white, because I just didn't fit in either one. So I just waged like a little personal war on everybody that I felt had it coming, which could be anybody at any time, really. My mother, who's actually Native American, Irish, and black, raised us as black. She was one of those militant women from the late 60s, a whole Huey P. Newton, Black Panther, power to the people. My father, who is black, but he's like from Louisiana, so he's one of them, red bones with freckles. He was a criminal, he did everything. He sold drugs, he used drugs, and he was just, he was in that lifestyle. My mother, she fought with my father. My father was abusive, put hands on her a lot, and he cheated on her, and he wasn't discreet about it at all. And so, of course, she didn't like it, and there was just a lot of violence in the house until finally she moved out and took us to another home in a little bit better part of Richmond called Hilltop, which was a little more middle class. And when it came time for me to go to high school, she enrolled me in Pinole Valley High, which was a completely white suburb. I think you could count on two hands the number of black people they had in the whole student body. And they were truly racist. There was actually a hanging there's a little Montalvan Manor, which is a little part right next to Pinole, where they actually hung a black dude. They burned crosses. And now this is like 79 or 80. And it had got to a point where I was just pretty much alone as a teenager. I started getting in trouble with the law and going to juvenile hall. But that was kind of like pretty much the pattern. After that, I would do burglaries. Then I started smoking pot. And from 14, 15, 16, it was group homes in juvenile hall. So at about 17, when I realized I had nothing to do with my life, I stopped going to school, so there was no way I was going to graduate high school. There wasn't anything I was going to do. I decided to go into the Air Force, and I joined the Air Force at like 17 and a half. My mother signed the papers because I was under 18, and off I went to Lackland Air Force Base in Texas. It was an experience. I should have stayed. I tested high on this aptitude test they have for electronics, and so they have this long electronics course called PMEL, and they told me it's hard, but you'll do good if you go through this tech school, and you do pretty good. You can almost write your ticket in the service, as an enlisted person. And I studied real hard, but I still had that little thing about me where I was rebellious, and I would get these little problems like called letter of corrections for doing things like wearing my shirt untucked because I thought it looked square to tuck it in, so I just refused it when people told me tuck it in. I would just whatever, and then they would write me up. And after I graduated tech school, which I did, I completed it, and I was in like the top 3%. And they were like, if you do it in the top 5 or 6%, then you could write your ticket. And I ended up getting my assignment to Offutt, Nebraska. I felt like that was like the route. I'm like, Nebraska? You guys told me, I could go anywhere I want or whatever, or something, Hawaii, you sent me to Nebraska. So of course I had an injustice, and I really just acted out, and they sent me to go see a brigadier general. He says, do you want to go home? He says, I'll send you home right now with a general discharge. So I came back home, a failure. But there was nothing for me to come home to. I moved to Berkeley because that's where my grandmother lived. And my grandmother had a very stable environment. And so she tried to instill good values, but unfortunately when I would go to her house, it was just a roof, and I would act like I had manners in her house, but I would do everything wrong the minute I walked out the doorstep. So city of Berkeley is where I really started falling in, with the criminals, the hardcore criminals. And then I say that because I started going to Santa Rita, Alameda County Jail as an adult, 18, 19 years old. It's a rough environment, and you have to, at times, prove yourself. And that's where I found acceptance. That's where I found where I could fit in, So if I could do certain things other people, and instead of being a prey, which is what happens to some people that come through, I was given an opportunity. Unfortunately, I was a drug addict by that time, so I knew my life is what I chose would be drugs and crime, and I was okay with that. I was comfortable with it. I spent the majority of my whole adult life in prison. I couldn't stay out for any time. I think the longest I may have stayed out of prison from the time that I was 20 years old might have been 6 months. So I got to the point in my life where I was a student at Contra Costa College, but of course I was still doing drugs and crime. I got pulled over. I was coming out of the casinos in San Pablo, and I got pulled over by the police, and I had drugs, and I was at the time spun out of my mind. So, they took me to jail. And for whatever reason, they were amenable. I represent myself, I'm that guy, and I have enough sense to be able to give them a headache. And I go through all of that, and they were kind of amenable to a program. So I wrote a letter to Delancey Street, knowing the impact it has in the court systems, but that was just like my opening gambit. I'm gonna use this one to open the negotiations so I can get over here where I could, do what I want to do. And it just didn't work out like that. It ended up being a Delancey Street or nothing. So, I came to Delancey Street simply as an alternative. It was 8 years and 80%. Or Delancey Street. And, I'm not the brightest guy in the Bay Area, but I picked that one. But I came to Delancey Street. Coming to Delancey Street and understanding that there's a better life without hate. Hate's not a good life. It's almost like poison, and if you stay here long enough and you just do what's asked of you, you actually can look around you and see what no hate is. And everything in Delancey Street is a manifestation of that. I truly understand now, if you can just be a decent person, good things happen. You don't have to worry. You don't have to worry about anything. You don't have to worry about bills, or you just be a decent person. If you can just wake up and be nice and be helpful, you know what I mean? And try to be considerate of how you affect other people, then you can't go wrong. My name is Dominic Blakeney, and I'm a hate breaker.